Welcome back to the deep dive. Today is Monday, February 2nd, 2026. And, I want to start with a bit of an admission.
Oh, yeah.
Usually when we do this, we're looking at a specific thing, right? A new bill, a court case, something that just happened. We react.
Right. The news of the day, the noise.
The noise, exactly. But today, we are zooming way, way out. We're not looking at the trees. We're trying to see the whole forest.
Mm-hmm.
Because the sources we have in front of us, they describe something much bigger than just politics. They lay out a whole ecosystem. And honestly, reading this stuff, it kind of changes how you see everything else.
It's really the only word for it, isn't it? An ecosystem.
Yeah.
Or, as one source puts it, an architecture of influence.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's a huge perspective shift.
It is.
You realize that while we're all focused on the big game, the presidential election, there's this whole network that's been doing something else. They're not just trying to win the game.
Yeah.
They've been redesigning the entire stadium.
That's a heavy way to put it. Redesigning the stadium. So we're not just talking about a political party getting its act together.
Yeah, no. This is a synchronized web. You've got religious hubs, these elite legal societies, and massive think tanks all working together to reshape the federal government.
And we're going to trace that whole pipeline.
Exactly. It's a supply chain. It starts with, spiritual formation, that it moves into legal networking, and it ends up right in the Oval Office.
We'll be talking about the Council for National Policy, the Catholic Information Center, People of Praise, and then the real muscle, Project 2025.
A lot of those names, they sound, a little boring, right? Council for National Policy sounds like they argue about potholes.
And that's the whole point. The bland names are perfect camouflage. If you call your group the Secret League of Power, people pay attention.
Right.
But Council for National Policy, you just walk right on by. But by the end of our talk today, you're going to see how they all coordinate to install what they call a traditionalist, originalist order. Okay, so let's get into it. The coordinators, the spiritual core, and the executioners. Where do we even start with a web this tangled?
You have to start in the room where it happens,
Yeah.
with the coordinators. And that means we start with the Council for National Policy, or CNP.
Okay, the CNP. I've heard whispers about them. Always described as secretive. But you're calling them an umbrella. What does that mean in practice?
Think of it less like a lobby group and more like a force multiplier. It was founded way back in 1981 by Tim LaHaye.
Wait, hold on. Tim LaHaye, as in the Left Behind guy, the author who wrote all those books about the rapture.
The very same. And that context really matters. He wanted to bring a sharp focus to conservative advocacy, sort of a conservative answer to groups like the Council on Foreign Relations.
Well, say the Foreign Policy Establishment Brain Trust?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the CNP is different. It meets 3 times a year, the locations are secret, and everything said there is totally confidential.
Which, I gotta say, sounds a little bit like a Bond villains meeting, doesn't it? Why all the secrecy if your ideas are good? Why not, put it on C-SPAN?
Because the goal is to align strategy without the media picking apart every little disagreement. They're focused on long-term movement strategy. You can't do that in public. In private, you can actually make deals. And the CNP gets 3 key groups in one room.
Okay, so who's on this guest list? Who's in the secret room?
First, you got the money. So wealthy donors, think the DeVos family, titans from various industries, the people who write the checks.
Okay, so the funding is there. Makes sense.
Second, the megaphone. Media owners like from Salem Media Group and political strategists.
Yeah.
People like Steve Bannon, Kellyanne Conway, Jeannie Thomas. The narrative shapers.
Got it.
And third, and this is so important, you have the pulpit. Major religious leaders like Tony Perkins from the Family Research Council.
I see. So you have the money, the strategists, and the religious leaders to bless the whole agenda, all agreeing on the plan before anyone else even hears about it.
Precisely. It's where all the different threads, the legal, the spiritual, the financial, get tied together into one very strong knot. They make sure that when the movement makes a move, everybody moves together.
Okay, so that's the boardroom, the strategy sessions. But you mentioned a spiritual core. And this is where the sources for me took a really unexpected turn. We're going from lobbyists and donors to churches.
We are. Specifically to the Catholic Information Center, or CIC. It's on K Street in Washington, D.C., right in the heart of everything.
And their tagline is something like the closest tabernacle to the White House.
Yep. Which is literally true on a map, but it's also very much a metaphor. The CIC is run by priests from Opus Dei.
Opus Dei, right. Their whole thing is the sanctification of work, integrating faith into your job.
Correct. And for a D.C. power player, a judge, a policymaker, That means bringing Catholic social teaching directly into how you write federal law.
But hold on, I mean, people network at church all the time. On the left, on the right. That's normal. Why is the CIC different? Why does this one spot get so much attention in these documents?
It's because of who is there and what they're doing. This isn't just coffee after the service. They run a program called the Leonine Forum.
The Leonine Forum.
It's a training ground.
Yeah.
They take these rising stars, future judges, agency heads, and they mentor them, shaping their worldview to align with this very specific traditionalist philosophy.
So it's like a finishing school for theocratic governance?
You could see it that way.
Yeah.
It creates a shared moral language. Leonard Leo, remember that name? He's central to all this. He's on the board. He got their highest honor. Kevin Roberts, the head of the Heritage Foundation, gets spiritual guidance there.
It creates a trusted inner circle.
It's a vetting process. If you're part of this, you're considered safe, you speak the language, you believe the same things deep down.
And that dynamic, does that connect to the other group, the people of praise?
It does. Very similar dynamic. People of Praise is based out of South Bend, Indiana. It's where Justice Amy Coney Barrett is a member.
Right.
Now, they're what's called a covenant community. Members make a lifelong commitment to support each other. But what the analysts in these sources focus on is the structure. It's very hierarchical.
They use the term headship, which sounds pretty intense.
It's a high-commitment lifestyle. The idea is that men have spiritual advisors, their heads. A married woman is headed by her husband. It's all about authority and submission.
And they say they're nonpartisan.
And legally they are. But the sources argue that this kind of structure creates a culture of commandability. If you're comfortable in a strict spiritual hierarchy, you're going to be culturally primed for the kind of traditionalist legal theories that people in this network promote.
It creates a disposition, a certain kind of person.
Exactly. And interestingly, it's ecumenical. Mostly Catholic, but not exclusively, so it helps bridge that gap between traditionalist Catholics and evangelicals.
Okay, let's just recap for a second. We've got the CNP for strategic alignment. We have the CIC and People of Praise for spiritual formation and vetting. Now I get to the machinery, the execution.
Right, and that brings us to the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025.
The 900-page elephant in the room.
They call it the Manhattan Project of Policy, and it's a good name for it. It was designed to be explosive, a full-on blueprint.
I've seen the headlines, of course. But let's dig into the mechanics. The whole thing seems to be built on one very specific legal idea.
It is. It's all based on something called the unitary executive theory.
Okay, break that down for me. Simple terms.
Sure. Imagine the entire U.S. government is one big company. Normally, we think of departments like the EPA or the FBI as having some independence, right? They follow the law.
Yeah.
The unitary executive theory says, nope. The president is the CEO,
Yep.
Full stop. Everyone works for him. He has total control over the entire executive branch.
So if the CEO wants to tell the environmental division to stop tracking pollution, he can just do it.
In theory, yes. They argue Article 2 of the Constitution gives him that absolute power. And to make it a reality, they came up with a tool. And that tool is called Schedule F.
I keep seeing that term, Schedule F. It sounds like a tax form or something.
It's the engine for the entire takeover. It's a plan to reclassify tens of thousands of career civil servants.
But wait, new presidents always bring in their own people? That's normal.
It is, but they only bring in about 4,000 political appointees at the very top. The other 2 million federal employees are civil servants. They stay no matter who wins. They're the experts.
The scientists, the analysts.
Exactly. Schedule F would strip job protections from up to 50,000 of them.
It makes them at-will employees.
Which means they can be fired for any reason or no reason at all. And Project 2025 built a huge database of pre-vetted loyalists ready to take their jobs on day one.
So the goal isn't just to change the leaders, it's to replace the actual gears of the government machine.
That's it. Dismantle the administrative state, that layer of neutral experts, and replace it with an army of ideological loyalists.
And looking at the policy goals listed here, that ideology is, wow, very specific.
Oh, it is. They talk about just eliminating the Department of Education, period. Dismantling or shrinking NOAA.
NOAA, the National Weather Service people, why them?
Because, in the view of the mandate's authors, NOAA is a key driver of climate change alarm. So if you control the agency that produces the data, you control the whole story on climate change.
It's incredibly thorough. I also see mentions of social issues, like the Comstock Act.
Yes, and that is a perfect example of this originalist method. The Comstock Act is an old law from the 1870s that bans mailing obscene materials.
Okay.
Project 2025 says a president can use the unitary executive power to just declare that abortion medications are obscene and use that old law to ban them from being sent by mail. No new legislation needed.
Just a new interpretation. And in the timeline we're looking at for today, February 2026, we have to talk about the military part of this. The sources point to Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense.
Right, and this brings in that Protestant vanguard. Hegseth is part of a group called the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches. He's talked about an educational insurgency. The Project 2025 plan for the military is to root out what they call woke ideology.
Which is a term that can mean almost anything.
It can. And with unitary executive power, you can define it however you want. The idea is to completely reshape the culture of the U.S. military to align with this very specific traditionalist worldview.
It's so all-encompassing. But I have to go back to something. How do all these people, the lawyers, the donors, the religious leaders, stay on the same page? It feels like it should be chaotic.
It does. But if you start looking at the names on the boards of directors, you see the same people over and over. And one name is at the center of it all, the synthesizer, Leonard Leo.
Leonard Leo, the Federalist Society guy. I thought he just picked judges.
That's where he started, but he is so much more than that now. I mean, just look at the map we've drawn. Leo is on the board of the CIC. That's the spiritual hub. He's the co-chairman of the Federalist Society. That's the legal pipeline. He sits on the board for the CNP. That's the coordination room. And he helps direct the huge dark money network that funds everything.
So he is literally at every single table we've talked about today.
He's the central node connecting it all. He links the money to the strategy to the personnel, and the personnel back to the ideology.
He's like the air traffic controller for the entire movement.
Or the architect. He makes sure the supply chain never breaks down. Just think about the flow. 1, spiritual formation at CIC. Leo's there. 2, legal vetting at the Federalist Society. He's there. 3, policy execution through Heritage and the funding network. He's there. 4, strategic coordination at the CNP. He's there too.
When you lay it out like that,
Yeah.
it's just incredibly efficient. It explains how underneath all the public chaos and the headlines and the noise, the actual movement of policy has been so deliberate and consistent.
The chaos is the distraction. The architecture is what's real.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? For someone listening right now, what does it all mean?
I think the biggest thing is that this isn't some secret conspiracy. They published the 900-page book. The infrastructure is out in the open. What it represents is a fundamental shift in the very idea of American government.
A shift from what to what?
From the idea of a neutral administrative state where nonpartisan experts run things based on law and data to a partisan, religiously infused hierarchy.
So instead of government as a neutral referee, it becomes a player on one of the teams.
A player with a very clear theological mission. So now, when you see a new court ruling or a change at the EPA or a new directive from Secretary Hegseth at the Pentagon, you can trace its DNA. You can see the fingerprint of this whole ecosystem.
It's like seeing the wiring inside the walls. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
And the sources say the ultimate goal is to build what they call a mere Christendom through the power of the unitary executive.
Mere Christendom by executive order. That's a heavy thought to end on. It really makes you ask, how does this kind of integrated model change the whole idea of the American Republic? Can a system designed for checks and balances really survive an architecture designed for total alignment?
That is the question, isn't it? And the answer is unfolding right now in real time.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up. We've thrown a lot at you today, but hopefully the forest is a little clearer now. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.